I would now like to introduce today's presenters, Jimit Arora and Mihir Bade with Everest, Brandy Curry with Shell, and Shweta Mohanty with SAP. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Jimit.
Agnes, thank you so much. Hey, really excited to be here. This is the grand reveal for the top employers for tech talent. Second year we are doing it. But before we kind of get to it, it is really an honor, privilege to have two of our top employers be represented. And there's something special about them. Not going to jump to that just yet. But I would love for Brandy to maybe start off and introduce her role. Brandy, really excited to have you on. Would love for you to share a bit about your work at Shell.
Thanks, Jimit. So very happy to be here, everyone, and very excited to see Shell amongst one of the top employers. So my name is Brandy Corey. I have the pleasure of leading talent acquisition or recruitment for Shell's technical businesses globally, of which IT fits primarily in that space. I've had the pleasure of spending 26 years of my working career with Shell in a variety of HR assignments, and I'm particularly looking forward to getting to join today and just spend a little bit more time talking together about top employers and some of the assessment and analysis done by Everest Group. So back to you, Jimit.
Thank you so much, Brandy. And Shweta, thanks for joining in all the way from Bangalore. But if you could also kind of share a bit about your journey, that'd be great.
Thank you so much, Jimit. And it's such an honor and privilege, to represent SAP, on this panel here along with Brandy. I'm really excited to come and share about, our secret sauce, what we do in SAP. A little bit about me. I head the human resources function for SAP in India, which spans across R&D, sales, and services. Presence in India, which almost 15,000 people. It's one of our fastest growing market unit, very thriving, strong development organization. And I'm responsible for designing and executing the people strategy and elevating our people culture. And it's absolutely thrilling to know that SAP has featured, as one of the top 3, organization across geographies this time. And I'm loving to be here to share and exchange my thoughts along with Brandy on some of the initiatives and work that we do here in SAP.
Awesome. Great to have you both joining in. Just a bit about myself, Jimit Arora, partner with Everest Group. I've been with Everest for nearly 18 years. And I head up a lot of the work we do with clients across different stakeholder groups, largely around transformation themes. This whole initiative about doing top employers for tech, top employers for GBS is something that my teams have been doing for the last couple of years. It's a relatively new area, a new foray for us, but it's been exciting to see the amount of receptivity that has existed, the amount of controversy potentially we also created in the market. Glad to have Mihir on the call with me as well. Mihir's a key analyst in our talent transformation team. He's done all the hard work. I'm just here to take all the credit, as usual. But with that, we'll dive right in and talk through the agenda for today, right? So if you think about what we are going to cover, we are going to spend a bit of time maybe setting up context, sharing what the assessments are about, why we do them, how we do them, methodology. Most of the time is going to be spent on the results and the takeaways from the results, right? My hope here is to learn as much as I can from Brandy and Shweta, who've given us their time. So we'll be sharing a bit about what their secret sauce is, as Shweta mentioned, and then also talk about what are the key pillars, what are the key tenets that companies should keep in mind in today's really interesting dynamic tech market, right? So we'll keep this interactive. As was mentioned before, please submit your questions along the way. We have some dedicated time towards answering those questions, but as you submit those questions, I'll be happy to kind of pose them to our esteemed panelists as we go along. Before we get started though, I thought we'd start it off with a short poll. and that poll should be coming up shortly, right? And effectively, tech hiring overall has slowed as you compare 23 versus where we were last year. In general, attrition is down, right? Question that we wanted to guess, are the tech talent wars effectively over, right? And again, Brandy, Shweta, anything you wanted to say while the responses are coming in? What's your point of view? Which of these 5 options will you choose?
Shweta, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted actually to preempt the audience, with my response right up front. But, if I have to really look at how, what's happening, across, especially with the tech hiring and what we saw in the last 2 years, I certainly don't have the confidence to say that, the tech talent war is over. It has certainly slowed down, but the demand for good tech talent continues to be there. And we have to keep an eye on how are we building, a great, tech talent within the organization. And the focus largely is now not only just hiring, externally, but also building, a good, base of tech talent within the organization. And, and hence I would say it's slowed down, but certainly not over. That would be my take.
Brandy, what would have been your choice?
Well, I think Shweta and I share that in common. I do think that while there have been slowdowns, the reality is that, it continues to be a challenge to find tech talent. And I think, high quality tech talent with specific unique skills is even more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reality is that, if we think about, the amount of transformation and change in our own day-to-day lives that is driven by digital technology, I don't think that's going to slow the pace. And I think that same thing is echoed in the hallways of our businesses as well. So I would definitely concur. I think there's slowdown, but more to come.
And I'd say that, if we look at what the audience has come back with from a poll perspective, they're with you, right? So the largest response was on that 34% saying, hey, no relief, still struggling to get quality tech talent, right? And a recognition that this is just a breather. I had 2 outlier responses, hey, we've solved this structurally. There's one organization that seems to have done it. Would love to know more from them. And the last one was I thought that was a funny one. Hey, Gen AI will solve all of this for us, but looks like some people believe that that's going to happen too. But predominantly, it does feel like the sentiment kind of indexes around a bit of a breather, not over yet, still a struggle for some of those high quality skills. So I think it's important to kind of establish that baseline, and with that, we'll keep rolling. So this study, right, top employees for tech talent, why is this brand perception important? So why did we really start doing this, right? So one of the things that we found in our client base, which is large Fortune 500, Global 2000 enterprises, is that, when you get to a macro level, organizations know, hey, who are the best places to work? Who are the top employers? Technology talent has been one of the big hot buttons for the industry. And when it came specifically around tech talent, there was a lack of an outside-in brand perception, which could really diagnose which companies did technology talent want to go after. So we thought that there was a gap. We were getting a lot of internal requests from our clients saying, hey, can you do this benchmark for us? And we said, if there's a number of people asking us to benchmark this, why don't we make an annual study of this? At the end of the day, we are a research firm, so we'd like to publish research on this. So we want to do that. More importantly, what was also emerging as we were doing this research is that we found a bit of a disconnect between what the leadership saw or thought the employees wanted versus what the employees truly wanted. So part of this was to also create a broad-based awareness of, hey, what do employees really care about? What are their concerns? You've got so many different cohorts in the workforce today. You've got, you still have some boomers, you still have Gen X, you've got millennials and Gen Z. We can't just solve for this tech talent issue with the same broad brushstrokes. So we wanted to put some research and data out there, and that's why we got started on this. Obviously, to do this at scale, we had to create a methodology that was going to be inclusive. So, and something that we could repeat. So we came up with this ability to do an outside-in proxy, as we call it, right? Where we are looking at data across different markets to develop a point of view on key employee value proposition levers. And then Mihir will share with you all the awesome science he's done to convert that into a bit of a composite score across ratings. So fundamentally, we saw market need. Clients were asking us for these comparative studies consistently. And there was no real reliable methodology to do this exclusively for tech, which is why we got started on this journey. It's relatively new. It's just year 2 of where we are, right? So what are some of the factors that we look into as we are looking at the top employers of tech talent assessment? We look at this across 5 dimensions, right? We're looking at employee satisfaction grade. Again, there's a number of social media websites. Mihir will talk through some of our sources in a minute, right? So we look at the overall satisfaction and the overall willingness to recommend, right? So we've looked at NPS. This is the equivalent of that NPS. Hey, would you refer this place to a friend? We've looked at the ratings that people have provided to Comp and Ben. This is the one that gets me into trouble the most. We have not benchmarked companies' compensations and benefits, to be clear, right? However, we have said, what's people's satisfaction as they report on Comp and Ben, right? So that's something that we look at. We look at the work environment, right? So what's the flexibility and autonomy offered? And this is where work environment is probably the one that takes most attention nowadays. We're looking across 5 dimensions: work-life balance, leadership, hybrid, office ecosystem, culture, and values. So I'd say that this is one of the most overweight dimensions in our assessment right now. Then we look at career opportunities, right? So what's the pace of career growth? How's that happening across different functions? What's the kind of learning environment? And then very importantly, and this is truly an important dimension here, is what's the degree of diversity and inclusion, and how visible is our firm in terms of driving these investments at scale across levels, right? So these were the 5 dimensions we looked at, right? Brandy, Shweta, I'm going to ask you a bit about your perceptions on the methodology in a bit. But Mihir, why don't you kind of talk through the various information sources we looked at to get to the results?
Sure, Jimmy. So to determine the perception ratings, we mined a number of employee forums, social media, professional media, and gathered ratings, reviews, and feedbacks. Some of the representative data sources are as mentioned on this slide. We compiled thousands of data points and analyzed these across industries and geographies. We developed an analytical engine to aggregate the perception ratings. And finally, we ingested all this analyzed data points into the model to calculate the perception rating for all the parameters that, Jimit, you mentioned on the previous slide.
So this is why I said, all the smart part I leave to me here. But Brandy, Shweta, as you kind of heard that, hey, this is outside in, we recognize there's limitations, right? Is something like this still valuable?
Yeah, so maybe I'll maybe I'll just give a my perspective on that, Jimit. So for us in SAP, I think this is greatly valuable because what we do have a lot of internal benchmarking that we do with our employees. We have a lot of listening processes, existing processes through which we try to listen to our employees. We do have our people surveys, and we get a lot of insights and learnings from how our internally employees are perceiving what we are doing. But having an outside-in approach is really great because It's one very real, view of what people are talking about and what they are hearing and how they are, how they are building perception, and perception is reality, right? So it's very, very important for us to look at also being benchmarked with other organizations who are in similar space. So I do find it extremely valuable, and having participated in the Everest GCC survey for the last few years, we do a lot of deep dive into the study. We map areas of improvement with the existing practices and identify a lot, gaps wherever we see. So this multi-dimensional outside-in perspective really helps us to design people, experiences, because your work models are changing, the employee needs are changing, how, people externally are perceiving you, is changing as well. So, any information that helps us to constantly look within is greatly valuable. And I really love the way some of the parameters that, the Everest Group has used for the survey, pretty much relevant for us. And, we look forward to use the findings to have internal discussion. So I do value, what the study throws up.
Thank you so much for that, Brandy.
Yeah, I echo many of those sentiments. I mean, I appreciate the data-driven approach. As Shweta mentioned, in SAP, we have it in Shell as well, where we do focus groups and listening sessions, people surveys, all very appreciative and very valuable. And what I really like about this one is that the point of view it takes is a data-driven one, not just, one that, you get a small focus group together and discuss, because I do think that skews data. So or skews outcomes. I very much appreciate the breadth and really the breadth, if you look across all of those forums in which you've looked at. So the data-driven approach, the breadth. I also think, what we did, because we're in the midst of actually just refreshing our employee value proposition in Shell, we did an inside out and an outside in insights. And when we laid this over the top of kind of what you'll see in the Everest Group study, I mean, I'm really pleased to hear that what we were sensing and picking up in our own study is mirroring that of Everest Group as well. So I think it was also just prime in terms of the calibration moment. And so I would desire to go forward in future years and in reviewing the study as well. So I certainly see value in it.
Perfect. No, thank you for that. I also recognize it was an odd question to ask, because it would have been awkward if you said, nah, I don't really like it. So I appreciate the vote of confidence, right? Mihir, so yeah, and once you've collected all of this data, what happens next?
Definitely, Jimmy. So on this slide, I will explain how all these ratings come together and how to read the final results. So once we had all the perception rating for all the parameters, we mapped the organization in a given geography on a scatter plot. On x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, we plotted employer brand perception, which is a composite score of compensation and benefit, work environment, career development, and diversity and inclusion. And on y-axis, we plotted success in the talent market, which looks at overall employee satisfaction, attrition, and joiner to exit ratio for the tech organization. And on both the axes, the farther away from the origin means the better perception. So the organizations in the top right quadrant are designated as top employers. We prioritized organization for the analysis based on their size, revenue, headcount, and scale of tech talent in the given locations. However, data availability had a role to play, because we did not want to base the results on too few data points. And final point, we recognize that industry matters. So we have segmented the results across 8 industry clusters in the final report. And with that, I will hand things back to you, Jimit, for the grand reveal to announce the much awaited results of top employers for tech talent.
Perfect. Hey, thanks so much, Mihir. We should probably do these on a evening event, with some red carpets, but again, future years. So with that, let's look at the results, right? And what I'm really most intrigued about. So the way the kind of results were represented, we did the 2x2s. Those are eye charts. You'll find them in the document that gets sent out. You'll get the detailed analysis. So we have separate assessments, as we mentioned, for India, for the UK, and for the US, right? I don't expect you all to consume these eye charts, so maybe we'll go to the next page, which lists these down alphabetically. So there is the only rank order here that you can assume is alphabetic. So what you have are the top employers for tech talent across India, US, UK. We had different sample sizes for each market, therefore different numbers. I had promised that there's something unique about the two ladies I have on the call with me, right? So SAP and Shell are two of three organizations that have achieved this top employers for tech talent recognition across the three geographies we've done, right? And I think that is something that is absolutely fantastic because it tells me that you'll have a secret sauce, which we're going to unpack. The only other company that was on this list that don't have a representation on is Cisco, right? So again, what's very interesting is that when it comes to tech talent, you would expect a software company, a high-tech company like SAP to show up. Brandy, I'm really excited to hear your story as an energy company, right, to drive this at scale across the world. So once again, congratulations. And maybe Brandy, I'll start with you first, right?
Yeah.
What's your secret sauce? How do you do it? How do you do it consistently across the globe?
Well, first of all, thanks again so much. I'm super excited to see Shell listed in all three geographies. Just as a bit of context, I think whether it's secret sauce, I'm not sure, but let me just share just a bit of context. So globally, we have about 17,000 IT professionals in the Shell organization. And inside of Shell, we have about 57 different lines of business. And so one of the things that I think is certainly a wonderful offering to, fellow prospects or candidates, and hopefully to our employees, is actually just the opportunity to work across all of those lines of business, should you so choose. So there's lots of opportunity to grow your skills and to work on really the problems and the opportunities of today, but also the opportunities of tomorrow, and particularly in the space around, energy transition and how do we bring energy to the world, not only the world today, and again, thinking about it then in 20, 30, and 50 years down the line. So there's opportunity that's available. There's opportunity to work alongside experienced, high caliber professional colleagues, and to do that in an environment that basically helps to achieve kind of a balance in one's work life. So to do that in a value-led culture where we've got honesty and integrity and respect, and to really create a sense of balance with your work life. In fact, that's one of the things that I would say is part of that secret sauce, if you might, is that the flexibility that Shell affords an individual, not only in their day-to-day activities, but across the course of their career, and what might be happening in someone's personal life and what their needs might be at any point in time. So really bringing that values-led culture, really backing it up by our behaviors and our actions. I think about at different points in my career, how we've been able to respond in a way where when I needed something that came through, and I was able to talk directly to, my leaders about what my needs were. And I think that's really an important and critical element. So I think for us at Shell, we really think about how do we create an organization that's developing the energy solutions of today and tomorrow? How do we bring forward the skills and being able to work in, all kinds of different areas to have a direct impact? How do we encourage the collaboration with experienced and high caliber colleagues? And how do we do that across, bringing balance in a values-led culture? So those are really the hallmarks of what Shell brings, whether you are in whether you're in Rio, Brazil, or whether you're in Houston, Texas, or whether you're in The Hague in the Netherlands, or whether you sit in Bangalore, India. It's really important for us that all of those four things really show up across all of our vibrant global IT community. So a few thoughts.
Fascinating. Shweta, what do you think? And what's your corollary? What's your secret sauce here?
Yeah, no, before I, share about, what we do, Brandy, it's so wonderful to hear, what Shell does and how you articulated, that, because, I think one of the things that is very common, and I think it would be common for pretty much all the organizations who have featured in the study, is the culture aspect. And SAP is no different. So, at core, SAP is an organization which is purpose and collaboration, driven. That's the core of our culture. What this essentially means is that our employees really connect with, our purpose, our brand, and that is something which runs across, everywhere, whether it is a early talent campus joinee who looks forward to start his or her career with us, or there is somebody who's at a leadership level. We really, want to take 5 or 6 generations along and make sure that a brand resonates with them. And that's pretty much the secret sauce. So one of the things that, works very well for us, in fact, our employee value proposition that we talk about is, we say we build breakthroughs together. And while this is like, a short statement, it encompasses the core of what we are there. We are an organization that, brings innovation across, whether it is for our customers, whether it is for our internal customers, which are our employees. We firmly believe in a bottoms-up innovation approach. We believe that we are shaping, the future together. And in order to, kind of shape the future, we have to have a highly collaborative team ethic, which focuses, on innovation and learning and development. And that's pretty much, runs across everything that we do, pretty much every people policy process that we run. But if I have to really, to your question, Jimit, if I have to really talk about what is it that differentiates SAP as compared to probably other organizations, is this entire aspect of co-creating, together on everything that we do, whether it is for our customers, whether it is internal. Our employees believe and connect that they, connect to, the larger purpose, and then they take steps to, collaborate. I cannot think of many organizations where, for example, in the human resources function, the work that is done, almost, half of it is actually being contributed, whether in terms of ideas or, for that matter, execution by the employees themselves. So you have, employees coming and saying, Shweta, this is not happening great, or this is what we need to change. And then, you ideate with them, you do design, get into design thinking, conversations with them, and together you come up with what makes it together. So that's what, what makes the difference. And that is something which I do believe is the culture that we are creating, where everybody feels that it's a bias-free environment where everybody's opinion counts and they can together make a difference, whether it is, at a very high level on what goes to our customers and what we are building for them, or for that matter, what we are building together for our employees in terms of people practices, in terms of, your initiatives. So I think that's something which, in a nutshell, I would say is special about SAP, Jimit. We truly believe that, we are really having a very strong value proposition on these aspects.
That's really fascinating to hear. And what you just described, in some ways, it's like you've created almost that virtuous cycle of ownership, which then drives towards the right set of outcomes. I do want to kind of come back to both of you and ask this question again. The whole thesis of culture, purpose, right? The softer elements of dealing with the organization. Now, I recognize that, you can drive certain interventions to create culture in a localized environment, right? Any best practices or something that you would say, hey, here's what our technology leadership team did, in addition to how we enabled them, that really allowed us to make this a global phenomena? Because I think that's the part that's really standing out for y'all. You'll have it not just in one location, but seems consistently across the globe. So any best practices around how you drive that culture, values, purpose across the organization?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
go
think,
ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, in fact, I was going to mention it before. I really like the consistency between Shweta and I. Here we are, two different sides of the globe in terms of where we sit. But the beauty is that we look after a tech community that is, again, is interested in growing and is vibrant and is culturally connected. And that's really the thing that I was going to highlight before, is just as well, how this culture is such an important piece of everything that we do. And I think to your point about, what might be one or two things that we do to build the culture along the way. I think from day one, when you join us, it's really about the leader you work for. And so we spend a fair amount of time with our leaders, talking to our leaders about, what are best practices, what are the kinds of, managerial activities and focus areas where they can create empowerment and engagement, and, really focused a lot on helping our leaders to kind of grow their skills, which then pervades down in the organization, right? It helps employees to then feel valued. It helps them to feel empowered. It helps them to feel respected. And I think, candidly, just being consistent about that and being consistently focused with leaders on how important those elements are. I heard Shweta mention it as well. Both of us have people surveys that we spend, it sounds like, a fair amount of time in. So taking that feedback and really doing something with it. So we spend a fair amount of time in Shell around developing our leaders in the area of, employee, just employee care, employee well-being, diversity and inclusion, those kinds of areas where we spend a fair amount of time. How about you, Shweta? Is that SAP?
Yeah, I love what you mentioned, Brandy, about the culture of connectedness. I think that's something which runs certainly between Shell and SAP. But if I have to really put it down in 5, elements that, we are focusing, and then I'd also, because you wanted a best practice, Jimit, I'll share what we are doing, in SAP. But before that, the 5 elements, like, first one, like Brandy mentioned, ask for feedback. We need to bolster our, listening strategies. We need to listen more. There is absolutely no silver bullet to address, if there is an employee connection gap. So seeking regular feedback, understanding the employee perspective, deploy learning into, listening into our, our systems and solutions is really, really important. And what we are doing as a best practice there is, just last year when we came back from the pandemic, we realized that, we need to let some of the difficult topics be there, up onto the stage, right? So we were like pretty much, whether it was attrition, whether it was challenge of hiring, whether it was our compensation, how we are stacked with respect to, what other organizations are doing, whether it was performance management. Every difficult topic, we brought it in front of, employees through this channel that we introduced actually in India, and now it's been globally there. It's called People Unplugged. So it's unplugged conversations, no holds barred. Leadership really comes onto the stage and talks about it openly. We take the hard questions from employees. The second thing that we have to have leadership which is visible and accessible. I think gone are the days when there's a corner room and, you can't reach out to the leaders. One of the competitive advantage that leaders today have is, if the employees are able to trust the leaders, and, it can be done in several manners, building trust by, when you have new joinees coming in, when you have your employees who are leaving the organizations, how you're treating them, right? People who are, retiring, what is the kind of, conversations that leadership, and how does leadership come about? So, after the pandemic, after being in a remote work, we introduced in-person onboarding. Last year itself, we said our leaders will be there to welcome every person who comes into the organization. So this is a leadership mandate, every person joining in, every person leaving, the touch point is really important. The third aspect I would say is humanizing the workplace. I think that's something which SAP is known for. Personal relationships really drive, and increase productivity and engagement. And, we realize that employees just don't come to work. They have passions, they have interest. So we have really worked very, very strongly on our employee interest groups. We have 50 interest groups running across, we have interest groups, who, there's a runners group. There are people who exercise together, people who do theatrical stuff together. There is a musical band. There are people who are really focused on CSR. So we are really humanizing the workforce, where we are telling you are not just valued for what you are doing in terms of your role and responsibility, but also who you are. So that's, again, something which is important. And second last would be building empathy in managers. And that is something which we have really tried hard on. So that's, again, one of the areas that we are working on. And the last one is purpose, connecting employees to the bigger picture, emphasizing what is the purpose, how we are improving lives around us. I think those are some of the things that, leads us to build this culture of connectedness, which I think Brandy was also alluding to. It's a long answer, Jimmy.
No, fantastic. In fact, I was taking notes, and at some point I might want to come back and memorialize these 5 and see if we can do another blog post on this, because I think this is something that everyone can learn from very quickly. Would you say that these tenets are applicable if you went to different SAP geographies?
Absolutely. And that's a conscious call as well. We want to make sure that anybody who is joining in any part of SAP, whether it is to our offices in Philippines, whether it is in Turkey, whether it is in Waldorf, our headquarters, or for that matter in US, the employee experience should really be consistent. And that's something that we are driving. Of course, every geography has its journey. Some of geographies are ahead than others, but yeah, these are consistent tenets across.
Understood. Okay, lovely. Hey, thanks so much. I know we want to keep the conversation going. So what I'll do is maybe talk about one offer that we have to our audience here. A number of you are in the audience. You'll see this kind of come through in the chat window as well. This offer is for enterprises, tech organizations, and this is where you get a customized diagnostic for your organization, right? So you can go to the link, request this. There's some pre-populated fields. If your geography or your company don't show up, just type them in and we'll follow up. And this will give you a more complementary benchmark for your organization based on this analysis. Okay, so with that, what I wanted to do was, talk about some of these factors, what really drives brand perception, some additional insights from this study. But before that, I want to do a quick poll. I know what I heard from both of you in terms of what is really driving value, but we wanted to kind of ask, what's the most often overlooked employee attractiveness dimension, right? Is it comp and ben, culture values, job security, career growth prospects, leadership impact? I think I heard a lot about culture and values and leadership impact from both of you. Let's just see what the audience comes back with in terms of what's important to them. This one's actually, at least as I'm seeing some of these results come in, and Shweta, Brandy, I don't know if you all are able to see them as well real time. It's quite even, and I'm a bit surprised because I really thought that 1 or 2 of these dimensions would go overweight. But I think that we are seeing that there's a fair distribution across most of these dimensions. And right now, the one that's kind of likely to be the most important choice in terms of overlooked employee attractiveness dimension is this theme around career growth prospects. Sorry, I know, Kiara, I think I kind of, yep, you're about to share the results. So career growth prospects is number 1. It's an overlooked dimension. The second is leadership impact. I think we spoke a lot about it. Third is culture and values. And maybe part of what this is telling me is that culture and values is very recognized and is no longer an overlooked dimension. But any reactions to seeing career growth prospect as an overlooked employee attractiveness dimension?
I have to say, I'm a bit surprised. That probably wouldn't have necessarily been the one that I would have seen as the leading trend there in terms of overlooked. I think in the landscape we've come from, kind of latter part of 21 and into 2022, I think between kind of comp and ben, career growth, I actually saw, a fair amount of conversations popping up in those spaces when we were negotiating offers. To be candid, everyone wanted to know about those couple of things because they had 3 or 4 offers in hand, particularly for some of the top talent. So I wouldn't have said that I thought it was the most overlooked. To be honest, I actually would have said that coming out of 22, that leadership impact was. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I'd have probably said culture and values, but I'd have thought that leadership impact would have been more in the lead, because I do think with as many organizations that grew in 2022 and as many new leaders were put in place in, across the industries, I would have thought that leadership impact and kind of, the movement of leaders between organizations would have been kind of, the most overlooked, just because now cultures are being so blended with all the different leaders who are joining from other organizations. And that's as Sweta and I were just kind of conversing about a moment ago, I think that's been such a focus area of ours, is to how do we ensure that we keep that strong leadership, and how do we keep the culture of the organization when all of these other elements were moving and when there were so many new people joining us. So I'm a bit surprised, but I'd be curious to see, Shweta, what do you think? Huh?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised as well, but I'm kind of trying to reflect as you were, sharing your perspectives, Brandy, on, why there is a perception that career growth is overlooked. And I think, one of the reasons could be, what has happened in the last few years, that there has been this enormous focus on hiring and getting people into the organization, and just making sure that people are able to deliver and be productive. So there's been so much of focus on driving efficiencies, being productive and hiring, that somewhere that entire focus on how do we grow internally our workforce? What are the different aspirations people have? How do we get them to career paths, which are new and experimental? I think as organizations, we have done work around it, but maybe we need to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And I think that is what this, survey is really reflecting. I must tell you that I was having this very interesting conversation with one of my team members. And, for the first few minutes of the conversation, and it was a career discussion conversation, and, I had assumed that the person would actually want to be in a career path, which looks very similar to my own career path, right? And, the entire conversation was that if you do this, and these are the kind of, learning opportunities you would have. And I was in for a rude shock, because after around 10 to 15 minutes of that conversation, the person paused me and said that, but you are not who I'm aspiring to be, right? My aspiration is completely different. I want to go, dabble with the field. I want to sell our products. Then I want to come back and see what our services teams does. I want to really, be a part of, the customer organization. I want to gather all these experiences, and then I want to kind of go back and do something in HR tech. And I just realized that somewhere we have lost touch with how careers are supposed to, look, and what are the growth prospects that organizations are able to offer. I think that's something which is I think, on top of mind for the audiences today, for employees today, is that what is that interesting career path that you can offer? I think that's what this is reflecting. So I'm a bit surprised, but I'm not fully shocked. I know where this is kind of coming from.
Now, here's the part that this is where Royal Plural. Mihir ran a lot of analysis in terms of what drives strong correlations with high ratings. It's a bit of an eye chart, but we tried to simplify this because the mathematical model would be harder to read, trust me. So what you have in dark green are issues that were contributing to these weights, to these results across 22 and 23, right? So last assessment and this assessment, that's the dark green one. The light green ones are newer issues that are driving correlation in 2023. Not surprisingly, clear career path visibility is the #1 theme that's also kind of showing up there. Hey, this is what attracts talent.
Yeah.
If you look at what I'd say, you know, three more that are kind of on this page, which seem to be at the same level of correlation, are competitive comp, holistic benefits, and upskilling, right? So upskilling, to my mind, kind of links to the career path, right? I did have a question on this, and you know, we'll move things around a bit, and I'll ask you a question, or at least there's an observation that I would like for either or both of you to comment on in the Q&A. Hey, compensation drives behavior, period. You work for an organization, not for free. Respecting that is critical for employees to feel respected. No debate on that, right? You agree, both of you?
I would say that's slightly cliche, Jimit.
I'm glad you said that.
I'm glad you said it, Shweta. I was thinking, I'm like, how am I going to say? No, go ahead.
And I'll be very honest on this. I think for the longest period of time, we believe that that's the only thing, that drives. And, in our organizations, we believe in this concept of 3 C's. Okay, the 3 C's, the 3 circles have to come together. One circle will probably gain more prominence at any point in time than the other one. And the 3 C's are compensation, culture, and careers, right? These are the 3 things that really needs to come together to drive the decision for any individual to be in the organization. Imagine somebody is paying you great amount of compensation, right? But, the culture absolutely, sucks. You're not being able to be yourself. You're not being able, to deliver. Somebody is all the time trying to pull the rug under you, even though there is great compensation, that really won't justify you won't look at that organization as from a long-term perspective. Maybe you'll make a quick buck and then go. Similarly, if there is, from a career perspective, there isn't really anything happening. And I'm so glad this career path visibility has featured here. If you don't know where you're going and how the organization is helping you to upskill, to be ready, you won't really pick up that organization to continue there. So I think it's a little bit convenient, if I may say so, to say that compensation is the only thing that drives, the stickiness to the organization. I really, really believe that it is something that, is equally important from a career as well as, the culture perspective. Brandy, what would you say?
I'm honestly not sure I could have said it any better. I really like your wording about it is convenient. I think, I think team members care about the value that the organization shows them. And that value comes through in a variety of different ways. And I don't think that compensation overweights that. I think it is a component, but if I look inside of Shell about the number of rehires that we have who actually may leave us and then want to come back, it's quite high. I think about the number of stories of where some have been, in previous companies or in startups or so forth, and they tell the stories. They join us because we have a competitive and a compelling competitive and benefits package and compensation package, but not because that's the number one thing that stands out. They're looking for value. How do they be a part of the fabric of an organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this was a bit of a layup question. I will acknowledge that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you'll kind of responded the way I was hoping you would. There is another question in here about some of the themes that are becoming important to the workforce. And we've done a bit of a U-turn on this thesis, right? The whole work from home, hybrid flexibility, where do we get more productivity? Do we need to have people co-located? Are we bringing people back to the office? So when it comes to tech, where I do think there is a case to be made that some co-location amplifies productivity, right? What's the balance? Any best practices there? Because there is an expectation around flexibility with the workforce. So how do you balance the need for flexibility with the desire for co-location?
So, we have in SAP, what we launched, a couple of years back around the pandemic is our thought on, on flexibility versus being in office, which we call it pledge to flex, right? And what it essentially says is that we firmly believe in a hybrid work environment. We understand that there is a need for employees to be there, attend to their personal requirements, family. You have to be there sometimes just to be, ensure that you are around when your family and your loved ones need you. But at the same time, it is important for employees to come together and collaborate and sit together and brainstorm and do the whiteboarding and learn from each other and have role models in the organization. So for us in SAP, the hybrid work environment is really, really crucial. And the way we are really kind of executing this is that we are telling our employees to come to office just for a few days in a week, and make sure that those days when they are there in the office, they don't really sit in their office spaces and work on their laptops. That's a time which is spent to getting together for lunch, going together for a coffee with the team, making sure that the scrum meetings are happening, the whiteboarding is happening. In fact, in a beautiful campus in Bangalore, and that is the case in pretty much every other office that we have worldwide, you would really find people sitting under a tree and brainstorming, or there are whiteboards which are full and there isn't really space more to write on that because people are discussing, debating, disagreeing, agreeing. There is innovation challenges happening. There are people who are really coming and going and meeting customers, and we do realize that there isn't really an option, and you can't really innovate in front of a laptop. You will get your tasks done, but you will not innovate in sitting in front of your screen. It is important to collaborate and meet your colleagues and do it together. So for us, there is merit in hybrid, and there is merit in ensuring that the times that which you need to be there, alone to do your deep work, you have that flexibility to do that from your home office. But it's equally important to come and meet your colleagues and do things together. I think that's the premise that we have, which we call it as pledge to flex. So we are all for hybrid work, and we believe that's the way to go.
Brandy, what's your posture on this?
Yeah, Shell's philosophy is quite similar, although I really like all these SAP kind of phrases. I'm going to take that back to Shell and suggest that maybe we come up with some of the catchier phrases, but I think they represent the values that SAP has. And I think if I think about the values that Shell has, one of those is around how do you create balance for an employee, but still drive the work that needs to be done. So we do have locations, that we've called out as being hubs or centers. So we do have an expectation that team members live and work in those hubs or those locations. And then we offer a variety of offices around those locations. So on average, we have 3 to 6. So I shouldn't say an average. I guess we have 3 to 6 range of the number of offices that a Shell team member can go to in those hub locations. They're built around different premises. They're co-location with different types of businesses. They're campus-like environments. They're appealing environments. And so we have that as the core philosophy around how do we create collaboration. We also believe that how we meet individuals where they are so that they can do their individual contributor work is important and can be flexible at home. So similarly, at Shell, we have the approach that creates the flexible working approach, where several days a week, you're expected to be in one of those co-located offices. And then the other days a week, you can work from home, or if you wanted to work from your back garden, you could do that too. It's wherever you can be the best version of yourself. So it really takes advantage of those two things of, yes, we need collaboration. Yes, we need innovation, and we can only get that when we're together. And then also it recognizes that as an individual contributor, and you can be your best version of yourself, regardless of where you sit, including your back garden.
Perfect. Hey, lot of phenomenal insights. And what I'm taking away is that you could be a technology company, a software company, it could be an energy company, right? If you want to succeed in this tech talent world, there's more similar things that we can learn from than what we are different on. Last kind of theme I had, and I know we've been given the 5-minute warning. The good news is that we've been able to tackle some of the questions along the way. Is what drives talent away, right? Again, if you look at some of the darker red, high correlation ones, there was this thesis around lack of pay correction, low increments. So yes, that will drive potentially talent away. And this is you're not doing it correctly, right? So it's not a compensation absolute comment. It's you're not fixing things that are not correct. Leadership comes up, and I think both of you referenced on how important leadership is and how that's been driving attrition. Lack of job security is one. If I look at, again, the themes that were now being discussed, which are in the lighter red, again, what makes an appearance? Unclear career growth path. So to me, that's one that's really standing out, as there's an expectation of clarity that we owe to the workforce. And there's a expectation there. Working model flexibility, if that's not going to exist, I think we're going to turn people away. And then the inability to drive collaboration across different teams, right? So that's another one that's driving people away. Any in here, any quick thoughts that were surprises for you, or does this all seem consistent? Brandy, you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't see any surprises. I would say from my lens, one of the things that's been really challenging in the last couple of years is indeed our ability to be flexible and adapt quickly in certain sets of circumstances, like pay, like benefits, like to just quickly address those kinds of things that are so rapidly changing in the markets we operate in. So I recognize actually what shows up here. I think the challenge is, how do we as large organizations, how do we rock up to these challenges and address them in a timely manner in which, as a candidate or a prospect, or when you're looking at a company and you're looking at the attraction piece, how do we do that effectively? And I think that's something we're still wrestling with. I think something else we wrestle with as well is brand awareness. When you think about tech companies, Shell doesn't naturally raise itself to the top of your list, although we've got fabulous opportunities. Like I said, a vibrant, growing IT community, and really working to solve the energy transition, and so forth. So I think there's great purpose, but we also struggle with that. So I think all of these here are a bit of a challenge, and the bigger your size and scale, sometimes the more difficult it is to respond in a quick manner.
Yeah. No, maybe 2 cents from my side, Jimit, and this kind of resonates pretty much everything which is there on the slide with me. The only other thing in terms of challenges that I see is that we are in this era of hyper-personalization, right? What employees are really looking forward is not like a one-size-fits-all approach to anything, whether it is the employee experiences, whether it is career growth, whether it is compensation and benefits, there is, whether it is the model and flexibility. That's why the hybrid fits in there. The biggest challenge going forward is that how would you and where do you draw the line in terms of hyper personalization? How do you deliver value to your employees where everybody's expectation would be very different from each other? I think that's what we are grappling with, if you would ask me honestly. And next 5 years, how organizations like SAP, like Shell, address that need from the employees is pretty much going to define whether we would continue to be some of the best employers, because that's what employees would certainly look for. You won't want the same compensation when your needs are different. You won't want the same kind of career growth when your needs are different. So I think that's something which we are dealing with, and which would continue to become bigger, is what I would feel.
Perfect. No, hey, this has been fascinating. Once again, in the chat, you'll find this. I thought that, it was hard enough to deal with the different cohorts of demographics. You go from that cohorts to hyper personalization. That's an even bigger challenge, but I'm pretty confident that Shweta, Brandy, y'all are going to help your respective organizations solve for it. Again, for those of you who participated, thank you so much for joining in. We're at time here. I believe Mihir's answered some questions along the way. I had posed a few to Shweta and Brandy as well. And then, we essentially just wanted to say thank you to both of you for making the time to speak to us today. And congratulations, right? We are excited.
Thank you.
We wanted to learn from your journey. You all were both graceful in sharing these lessons, which I hope will be useful for everyone. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much.